Hello everyone, I'm Hugo.
And I'm Jake.
And this is Who Cares, where we're going to discuss and debate the Doctor on his adventures through space and time.
And this episode will just further prove our fan theory that Miss Frizzle is a future reincarnation of the Doctor.
Seatbelts, everyone!
Hello everyone, welcome back to Who Cares. So today we're discussing the new Doctor Peter Capaldi's second episode.
Into the Dalek.
This is the second outing, and really what I would consider the first official outing of the new Doctor, because the first time that they're really out there on their own is where we really get a sense of who they are as the Doctor.
Yeah, even though the Hand had a lot to do with the Tenet stuff, no one's like, man, my favorite episode of Tenet is when he cuts his own hand off. Regeneration episodes, you just gotta give him a little bit of a pass.
Yeah.
This, we scrutinized hard, and it was good.
I thought it was very good. So before we actually get into the episode, as last time, I'm going to talk really quickly about the new intro, but obviously not as much this time because we already established it last time. Yeah. The new intro, I said I really liked the visuals, but the audio kind of annoyed me. The really theremin-sounding intro. The more I've heard it, though, it's starting to grow on me. So
As predicted by me?
Yeah, it is. It's sort of becoming more. Yes, this is the Doctor Who theme song. Obviously, it always was, but the sound was off. But now I'm getting used to it, and I'm getting the feel for the season. Yeah. So that's good. Now, before we talk about the actual episode, again, remember, spoilers. So if you haven't yet seen the episode, go and watch it before you come back here. And then, of course, watch our wonderful video. So, we open up in space, as many episodes of Doctor Who do, and you can easily see that the effects budget for this season must be higher than it has been in the past.
It looks so good. And it's a ship, it's a tiny ship, kind of like a scout ship, and there's a dead guy in the passenger seat, and one of the very main side characters is piloting and like freaking out and like getting chased by a Dalek ship. And there's a bunch of explosions and meteors, and it looks really, really, really good.
The first time I was impressed by effects in Doctor Who was probably the 50th anniversary, where it seemed like their new budget kind of came into effect, especially since, it was a big event. But here it seems like it's still carrying over, which is good. I mean, don't get me wrong, I'm fine with Russell T Davies seasons, but the effects kind of take you out of it.
Yeah, a little bit.
But I really like that. So then the ship is about to be blown up by a Dalek mothership, as we've seen before. I'm still curious how the Daleks rebuild themselves so often, even though the Doctor continues to destroy them. But it's Doctor Who, so I'll let that one go. But the ship is about to be destroyed. It blows up. The screen goes white. Remember this, because we will be talking about that later.
Yeah,
and then she wakes up on the TARDIS. The Doctor has materialized it around her, so she is not dead from the Daleks.
Yes, and she freaks out, and she's like, take me back to my ship. And she's holding a gun, and this is a really great scene. He's just holding the coffee, and he's like, no, that's not how it's done. And then she keeps pointing the gun at him. Take me to my ship. Do it the right way, he says. And this is a great scene. And then she lowers the gun slowly and says, will you take me to my ship? And then and she goes, please? He goes, okay, and he kind of just gently cranks the TARDIS crank, and they go and they get out. And it's just one of those scenes where you see, like, this new Doctor will not take your shit.
Yeah, I really enjoyed. I think this is the first, because, I mean, don't get me wrong, we got a little bit of it in Deep Breath, but this is the first scene we really get a sense of presence from the Doctor, and we get what he's all about. He is the one who is in charge in the room, which is, I think, what the Doctor should always be. You should never forget he is the smartest person in the room, and he's not going to take anything from you. Yeah. You're going to respect him.
And it's much into contrast from the Matt Smith Doctor, which almost certainly he was in charge all the time, but he didn't have that air of superiority. He would turn it on and off, and he would get really hardcore if he had to, and he'd get really intense. But generally, it was like fly by the seat of your pants. This one, very pointed, very razor blade, very just let me do my job.
So he then takes the woman whose name is Journey Blue, he takes her to her ship, which was a medical ship. It is now full of rebels who are fighting the Daleks, because this is presumably at some point in the future where the Daleks are again trying to take over, and humans and probably other species are trying to fight them back, seemingly not so successfully.
So we get to the premise of the episode where they follow him through corridors and basically say, oh, so you're a doctor? Well, we need a doctor. And then he, questions, well, why do you need a doctor? It's a medical ship, right? And opens doors, big reveal, it's a sick Dalek, and they need him to cure it. But why? Why does he need to cure it? He hates the Daleks, right?
Yeah, but apparently this is a good Dalek.
Yeah.
I'd like to point out, too, when they open that door and it's the Dalek, when we get the reveal and he goes, Doctor! If you remember back to Series 1, Eccleston's episode Dalek, where he met the rich philanthropist who had what he called a Metaltron, and then it turns out to be a Dalek.
Yeah.
Very similar feel with the reveal of what it is. Meanwhile, or I guess meanwhile doesn't really work in time travel, does it? Well, at some point Clara is at Coal Hill High School, which I really like that they're setting where she is in Coal Hill High School, which is actually the school where Ian and Barbara came from, the first Doctor's first companions. And actually, in the 50th anniversary, the Coal Hill High School, if you look on the board, on the sign of the school, it shows that Ian, who was one of the first companions, is still on the board for the school. So I think it'd be really cool if we saw him show up at the future at some point.
Even for just like a scene of fan service, I think that'd be neat too.
But we're introduced to Danny Pink, who is, I think, pretty obviously going to be a companion and Clara's love interest.
So he's an ex-soldier, and he kind of does a school ROTC thing, and he's also a teacher. I don't know what subject. They didn't really make it clear. Was it like history or something?
Math.
Was it math?
It's math.
Oh, okay. And Clara's also a teacher there, and they kind of, have like a little romantic thing going on. And it's cute, and you can kind of see where this is going. It's going to be the Mickey.
See, I don't know if I'd say
he's going to be better than Mickey, but I think he's still Mickey. You know what I mean? He's Mickey.
He's going to be a mix between Mickey and Rory, because I think their love interest is really it's not just going to go away, because Mickey ended up being a kind of a throwaway character.
I suppose, yeah.
I think he and Clara are actually going to get together, and they're going to end up, whenever they leave, they'll leave together and be together.
Yeah, I hope it's not like a Rory Amy thing, though, where they're off in another universe. I hope it's either they kill them together or they're still there.
Yeah.
And because you can only do that sort of thing so many times before it's just not fresh.
I think they have to kill him. They haven't killed a companion in forever.
I would love Clara to be killed.
And I know
that sounds awful. I don't hate her. Here's the thing. I think, like you said, it's overdue for a dead companion, but also I think the way she came in with death, I just think it would make so much sense if she did die, because she's the impossible girl. She is not supposed to be.
And while we're on the subject anyway, I'd like to point out that, while I'm not a huge fan of Clara, I do think that in the last episode and in this episode, she's getting a lot more characterization.
Definitely.
And I like the relationship she has with the 12th Doctor much more than with the 11th. Yeah. I think maybe in part even because he kind of makes fun of her, constantly. Yeah. Which, I mean, it's funny. It's usually a funny joke.
He basically calls her unattractive every time he can get a chance.
Yeah,
which is funny.
I like
she's clearly not unattractive.
Yeah.
It's good. And also I think it's important because she's no longer this mystery that he has to unravel. She's now become a person, so now we're learning about her too. Mm-hmm. So I think that kind of makes sense.
Mm-hmm. So he does go and pick her up, and they have a conversation where they reveal that, he left her in Glasgow at the end of the last episode when he went to go get coffee and just got distracted somehow.
Yeah. And he still has the coffee, and Hugo's favorite part of the episode, arguably, is this short scene.
Yeah, he goes and he just kicks the TARDIS door open. I don't know why. It's a brief second of a scene.
They don't even zoom to the foot.
But I cannot imagine any other version of the Doctor going up to the TARDIS and just kicking the door in like he does not care. And
it totally works.
Yeah.
It was actually, for one of those like shots that seems improvised.
Yeah.
It totally works. It's that Doctor. There's an overarching theme here that we have to touch on. Which is the Doctor is kind of wondering if he's a good person. Mm-hmm. A good man, he calls it. And so all throughout the episode, he's doing like very gray, good or bad things. Yeah. So it's good. And I think, and Clara says to him, I don't know if you're good. And it's important.
So the Doctor takes Clara back to the future where he had been before. They do a nice walk and talk, as they call it in the biz. Yeah. He has some good jokes. You've seen it in the promo, the carer joke. It's very funny. And then he explains to Clara, this Dalek is basically malfunctioned so badly it's turned good, which we've kind of had the good Dalek story in the past, but it's a new version of it, so I'll accept it.
It seemed fresh, even though it's not necessarily.
So they prepare to go inside the Dalek with the miniaturization ray. I assume it's very similar technology to that was used in the robot from the future that we saw in Let's Kill Hitler.
Yeah. And that whole season, I guess.
Yeah. The Doctor makes a funny line about don't be lasagna. And these two red shirts, I'll call them red shirts because you know they're only there to die and make the threat seem serious.
Right.
They're going to go in with the Dr. Clara and Journey, the soldier that he saved.
Yeah.
So they shrink down in this little pill kind of looking thing.
Yep. And they go into a Dalek, which kind of looks like it's very corridored. But they keep the structure of it. I mean, it's a ring with a central structure in the middle, and it's got like all these organic mixed with machine thing.
The first scene we get as they go into the Dalek, though, is clearly setting up for the climax. He goes, "This is the evil engineering. This is the thing that stores all the Daleks' memories, and if it's something that's good that might change its mind, it suppresses that memory." I don't know why the Doctor doesn't automatically decide to shut that down, but he just points it out very clearly for that. Then we get a scene where one of the red shirts shoots a
grappling hook?
Yeah, shoots a grappling hook into the Dalek, and he goes, "No, don't do that. It's a living thing, you idiot."
So basically we'll call them the antibodies, because that's basically the comparison they draw. They're little tiny robots that come in and take care of threats that are on the inside of the Dalek's armor. So the guy gets vaporized, but right before he does,
the Doctor goes, "Here, swallow this." And if this were Matt Smith or even David Tennant, not Eccleston though,
it'd be an effort to save them.
But no, this is actually just a pill that's going to allow the Doctor to track his dead body. So the antibodies do kill the guy. They vaporize him and vacuum everything up, including that little pill he gave him, which is actually, I think, a little energy core, an extra one from the sonic screwdriver. And the Doctor follows it. They're like, "We thought you were saving him." And he goes, "He was already dead. I was saving us." Which again comes into the "is he a good man" thing. I still think he is. I think that's a reasonable. It's certainly not sentimental. It's not something Matt Smith would do, but it is a reasonable thing to do in that situation.
Absolutely.
So they follow it. They go down the Dalek feeding tube, fall into a big gross pit, kind of like in the episode The Beast Below with Matt Smith.
And they're all covered in goop.
And they're like, "What's this goop?" And he goes, "People."
And he makes actually a pretty funny joke about, "Wait, you mean Jerry's down here?" Or whatever the guy's name was. He goes, "Yeah, he's probably the top layer, so if you want to say anything, now's probably your time."
Yeah, and that's really funny.
Because he's just so insensitive, and I like that he's not attached to the people around him besides Clara, really.
Yeah.
Like, that's... Because usually Matt Smith would be like, all life is sacred, and this guy's just like, it's kind of a means to an end.
I think he still thinks life is
he
sacred,
does too.
But he also knows when it's lost, it's lost. It is what it is. So they get out of there, and they finally get to the core of the Dalek, the thing that is apparently, they find out, leaking radiation and causing the malfunction in the Dalek.
Yep. So the Doctor uses a sonic screwdriver.
As he does.
Heals it immediately, and then, wouldn't you guess it, the Dalek... evil again.
Yeah.
You can see that coming, I guess. It's not really a twist so much as you can kind of see a shred of hope in the Doctor. Like, maybe this is finally, I'm going to get a break. Maybe I'm going to win one.
One of my favorite scenes in the episode is actually right after it turns evil. Because again, we talked about Capaldi's acting in the last episode, but I like it here too, where the Dalek finally goes, The error has been repaired, exterminate. The look on the Doctor's face, it's not necessarily angry or anything. He just kind of goes, no. Like, he knew it was going to happen, but he was like, hoping.
Yeah, it was good. And then Jenna Coleman, who plays Clara, actually gets her acting chops out for a little bit and has a really good scene with the Doctor. And she takes control of the situation for the first time since she's been a character, really. And she has to basically nudge this new Doctor into being like, no, maybe we can change things.
Yeah, because it was explained earlier, Rusty, which is what the Doctor had been calling this Dalek, changed his mind about being a Dalek and the Daleks, the whole Dalek mindset. Yeah, he changed his mind about it when he saw a star being born, because regardless of how many people and universes and stars the Daleks kill, new stars are always born, life prevails. But apparently, the Cortex Vault, the thing that is what the Doctor calls the evil engineering, once the radiation leak started, wasn't able to suppress this memory, but now that he fixed the leak, it can suppress this memory, which keeps it from expanding its mind and making it able to be good. So the Doctor and Clara get together with Journey and the other girl whose name you don't know because she's a red shirt, and they decide, okay, Clara, you go to the Cortex Vault, try and get the memory unlocked.
But we have to do it fast, and the only way to do it is to use those grappling hooks. But when they did that, the first guy died. So the red shirt, whose name we don't know, basically comes down to the decision, like, is it going to be worth it?
Yeah.
And they decide, yes, it's going to be worth it. And she's like, okay, Doctor, name something after me. And then she says her name, and I forgot it.
Yeah, whoops.
So she shoots up, and basically they get on the things, and they zip line up. And then you have a scene where she's about to die, and they're vaporizing her, and then white light. And now she's in heaven with Missy.
Yes, again, much like the last episode at the end with the clockwork droid, but we will save this for the end because I think the overarching plot should be saved until the end of the episode. I agree. Okay, so Clara does get to the Cortex Vault. Meanwhile, the Doctor has made its way to the actual physical, the organic part of the Dalek.
Yeah, if you've seen a Dalek open up and you've seen the animal or the being inside, you know what we're talking about. The eye, this kind of squid billy.
And he actually gives a pretty good speech before Clara even does anything, where he's talking about second story from the original First Doctor, where he goes to Skaro and finds the Daleks for the first time. He says to the Dalek, you know, when I first left Gallifrey, I called myself the Doctor, but it was just a name. But then I went to Skaro and I met you, and I knew who I was. The Doctor was not the Daleks. So some Batman-esque pathos where he defines himself by the juxtaposition of his main villain, which is really interesting. Good callback to the first Doctor.
That was some of the best writing in this episode.
Yeah. And then we cut back to Clara, who does, in fact, with the help of Journey, turn on the memories, which is surprisingly easy to do.
She kind of crawls through a tunnel and, like, presses buttons, and then they turn on. Since you're in the area where the Dalek sees out of, there's, like, a screen behind the Doctor, because, remember, he's miniature and standing in between that and the actual physical Dalek. And you're seeing stuff go in the background. He's like, look, isn't it beautiful? Isn't it wonderful? And he's like, yes, I see the universe. It's, like, divine. It's wonderful. And then he's like, what else do you see? And then the Dalek says, hatred.
Because the Doctor has plugged himself into the Dalek so that he sees the universe from his perspective, and that all the Dalek can focus on is all the hatred for the Daleks that the Doctor has. The Dalek then goes on a killing spree, killing Daleks that have been invading the Rebel ship. Which is actually, man, the budget for this season had to be higher, because they blow up like 5 Daleks.
Yeah, and if you remember, they don't usually blow up the Daleks. Usually they're like, spark and fizzle and like their heads will drop.
In a scene that isn't in the episode, they re-enlarge themselves outside of the Dalek. And they have a brief conversation where the Dalek says to the Doctor, why aren't you happy? This was a victory. And the Doctor says, you looked inside me and all you saw was hatred. That isn't a victory. A victory would have been a good Dalek. And the Dalek in return says, I'm not a good Dalek. You're a good Dalek, which again, very, very similar to the scene in Eccleston's episode, Dalek, in which the Dalek says, you would make a good Dalek.
Yeah, because he's really, really good at destroying things.
He is. I mean, at the end of the day, the Doctor's character...
And holding on to hate.
Yeah, he, whether he likes to admit it or not, he just has this primal grudge against the Daleks, understandably to an extent, because they basically made him destroy Gallifrey, and now, obviously, they're in a pocket universe, but up until very recently, he thought the Daleks made him destroy Gallifrey. So then the Doctor, after the scene, seems visibly upset by it, leaves, Journey tries to follow them, and says, take me with you as a companion. The Doctor says...
For a second, you think you're going to get another companion.
But the Doctor basically says, you're probably nice, and I know you're brave. I just wish you weren't a soldier. Which is kind of weird. This is... I don't like to harp on plot holes, especially in Doctor Who, because, you know, it's a time travel show. But, some of the Doctor's best friends have been soldiers. The Brigadier, who was the head of unit back in the 3rd Doctor's days, they were really good friends. They actually referenced him back in the 11th Doctor, too, very briefly.
Yeah, he's also friends with Winston Churchill, who was responsible for a lot of soldiers. So But I think the point is this new Doctor really... He wants to try to avoid killing, but he just can't.
Yeah. So we get that. Clara gets back home. They do their thing where she says, when are you going to come back? He says, sooner or later. She leaves. Meets up with Danny again. They set a date, basically. And he says, you don't have a thing against soldiers? She says, no. Walks away and under her breath says, that's not me. You know, again.
Yeah, kind of like, different.
Yeah.
We're different.
And then we get the next week, but we'll talk about that at the end as well. So the episode as a whole, I thought it was an excellent episode.
I thought so too.
Especially for a first true outing for a new Doctor. I thought the idea was pretty original. I mean, don't get me wrong, it's obviously been done in other mediums before.
Right.
But it's the first time it's been done on Doctor Who, and it's pretty interesting.
Right. And I mean, the shrinking inside of a large thing and it being treacherous, not original, but what they did with it was, and using the Dalek as kind of like a weird mirror for the Doctor to look into and see himself as kind of this, holy shit, this is how other people view me. I might be fucking awful to people. I think that's very interesting. So I think as far as the overall scene, like the where they're at, not totally original, but the plot direction and the character development, Very, very well done.
So before we go, let's talk about the couple things at the end. The Missy subplot, which is going to be a thing throughout the entire season.
This is going to be our crack in the wall.
Yeah. We talked about our theories on who Missy is in the last episode, but that isn't as important in this episode. In this episode, it's not important who she is, but what she is. And I'm going to put some videos side by side here to show a comparison. Remember at the beginning of the episode, Journey was about to die in an explosion. The Doctor materialized the TARDIS around here, and we get this bright white light, and then it fades out and she's in the TARDIS.
Yes.
Now, when the red shirt gets killed, the same thing happens, and then she appears in what Missy calls heaven, and she's sitting there with Missy. Right. So my theory is that no matter who Missy may be, it might even be a completely new character, she is a Time Lord. This is her TARDIS. The heaven that she's been bringing these people to is her TARDIS that she's materializing around people. And you could argue, well, the clockwork droid was dead. Yeah, but it's also a robot. She could have picked it up and repaired it.
Exactly.
And in this episode, she picked her up right before she died. So I would say she's a Time Lord, whether that be the Ronnie or the Master or some new Time Lord that is yet to be seen. But she is a Time Lord. And if you'll remember back to the first episode with her in it,
you can see the structure around it. It's very cylindrical, very much like the Doctor's main room in the TARDIS. There's a fountain in the middle shaped kind of like a control panel where it goes up in.
Yeah.
And it's got a lot of circles, and it looks like very symmetrical. And it when you just take a step back, it looked very TARDIS-y.
Yeah, and I think these are all things Moffat's putting in to kind of hint towards that, so that after the reveal at the end of the season that she's a Time Lord,
you can go back and look and be like, oh yeah, okay.
As to why she's collecting these people, I've heard a couple theories.
Ooh.
I've heard she's building an army to go against the Doctor, people who will not like her. I've also heard, though, she's collecting people to possibly help the Doctor in a situation that she knows is coming up.
That would be interesting, because the two people that have died so far aren't necessarily against him.
Yeah.
Like, he had an understanding with the clockwork droid, and he also had an understanding with the red shirt. So I mean,
I think this is actually an interesting thought someone had too. I read on Reddit was they said, what if they did kind of a retread of Trial of a Time Lord, which was a Sixth Doctor story with the Valeyard?
Ooh.
And they said, what if someone put the Doctor on trial for some reason, and these are all going to be witnesses, basically, who are going to testify for or against him and his actions.
That would be a really good episode, especially because you could bring someone like the Valeyard back.
Yeah. I want the Valeyard to come back, but I also want them to explain exactly when in the Doctor's timeline does he split off from the Doctor, but they could get into that then. But, that would be interesting because it ties into the overarching theme of the season of, is the Doctor a good man or not?
Exactly.
And that's a perfect way to do it. Put him on trial and make him face the actions that he's had and the effect that he has had on the universe. But that's pretty much just our theory on it.
So, our next episode is going to be
Robots of Sherwood. And that is written by Mark Gatiss, which if you know his track record on Doctor Who, his episodes are very hit or miss. His last episode was Nightmare in Silver, which I thought had very interesting concepts, but overall was kind of a weak script. So
but he is the showrunner for Sherlock.
Yeah,
so, and that's always been good.
I know. So we'll see what happens with Robots of Sherwood next week. I'm Hugo.
And I'm Jake.
And this has been Who Cares?
Who does care?